Hello everyone and welcome to this week's webinar, which is about digitize your compliance processes with Impero. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes for the last attendees to join and then we'll get started. Right. So let's get started. And as I was mentioning, this week's webinar is about digitize your compliance processes with Impero. So with me today, I don't have Morten Christensen as I usually do, our head of customer success. He is about to be a dad the second time around, so he's currently in a hospital. Instead, I've got with me Trine, our marketing consultant, who is going to help me basically ask any questions that you're going to provide. So thank you for helping today, Trine.
Of course.
From my own perspective, my name is Sienna Rasmussen and I'm a business development director at Impero. I am heavily focusing on the UK and the Nordic markets from a new customer perspective, but I'm also focusing on our existing client base, making sure that they are using Impero optimally. And that is simply because I bring a background as an auditor, as a finance accountant and a consultant as well. So I very much know what you're going through, whether you joining today, it's a matter of you building your control framework, operating your framework, or maybe even assuring the effectiveness of the framework. So the agenda for today, if I can get it on the screen. There you go. The agenda for today is basically to give you a high-level introduction to the entire Impero platform. So some weeks we have technical deep dives into individual modules. However, today is going to be a high-level introduction to all three of our modules. So we'll be looking at, first of all, how we can identify and evaluate our risks and how we can basically connect that to mitigating actions within our control management module. We'll also be touching a bit upon our reporting module, how you can easily access documentation, and to wrap around all of these three modules, how you can have robust user management and how you can easily manage these. So you have the ability to ask any questions throughout this webinar, and I'll also hold time at the end to answer any questions that I haven't had time as and when we've gone through the demo. So I am now going to switch and I'm going to show you the entrance of Impero. So basically what you see now is the entrance of Impero. As long as you've got a web browser and internet, then you're good to go. You have the ability to log in using either your email and a password, or you can combine it with a two-factor authentication, or you can even top up the security by adding a single sign-on. Logging into Impero, this is the dashboard that you will be met with. And if I start by taking you through the menu, you will first of all see the risk management module, you'll see the control management module, and you will see the reporting module. And those are the three modules that I'm going to take you through today. It's important for me to say that everything you're seeing today is seen from an administrator perspective. So I will tell you whenever we have a swap till the end user, but for now, everything is happening in admin mode. Jumping to the risk management module, we have our front page where we can basically list all of our risk libraries. So it's important to say that we are not only a finance and tax management platform, we can provide support to any types of processes that you may have within your company. So this is just to provide you with a couple of examples. But today, what I'm going to show you just for the purposes of this demo is a financial reporting risk and control. Each of these risk libraries consists of two panes. We've got our risk directory where we're going to identify our risks, and we have our risk map where we're going to evaluate our risks. In this risk directory, we have the ability to divide our processes or our organizational units, however we want to structure our risk library, into a process and sub-process. And then we have the ability to identify our risks using this, say, out-of-the-box risk card. It's important to say that this is a very flexible solution, so you have the ability to basically alter this to match your specific risk framework. However, going through this example, what we need is a name of the risk, we need a description of the risk, and we then have the ability to work with scopes. And this means that you either have the ability to create a global risk that you can push out to, for example, individual entities, or you can create a local risk sitting in a local entity and report it back to the group. We then have our flexible mechanism down here where we have the ability to attach risk attributes onto our risk card. So in this instance here, we're talking about financial statement assertions and COSO objectives. Again, completely flexible. You can change them to match your specific risk framework. Once you've identified your risk, you are then gonna apply it to a number of entities it is applicable to. So in this instance, we're saying this specific risk is applicable to both Impero AS, Impero Denmark, and Impero Sweden. And you have the ability to basically attach as many entities as it is applicable for. Once you've identified all of your risks within the risk directory, you are then jumping onto the risk map. And this is basically where you perform your risk evaluation. And going down to the treasury process that we had before, you can now see that we have populated this risk 3 times, meaning that it has been pushed out to Impero AS, Impero Denmark, and Impero Sweden. So this way, we have the ability to make a tailored risk assessment of each entity it's applicable for. Again, like the other risk card, we have a standard out-of-the-box example as to how you can evaluate your risk. Again, completely flexible, so we can match it to your risk framework. We have all of the data from our risk identification, and we now have the opportunity to risk evaluate each of these risks. So as a standard, again, completely flexible, we have the ability to evaluate our inherent risk, that is the risk before any mitigating actions. And currently this is a 5x5 scale with this taxonomy, can be altered into a 3x3 or 7x7, etc. We even have the ability to work with multiple different, say, values. So it may be that you want to evaluate your risk both on a monetary impact, but also on a compliance and a strategic impact, for example. All of that we have the ability to build in here and basically calculate a risk score. Once we've identified or evaluated our inherent risk, we then have the ability to basically handle our risk, address our risk, using these 5 measures here. What's most important here is, as long as you reduce your risk, which you would do in 9 out of 10 instances, we then connect our risk management module to our control management module, meaning you have the ability to basically attach mitigating actions that are relevant for this risk. So as long as you have the controls defined within your control management module, you can basically attach them to your risk library as well. Once you've attached all of the controls that are available or that are applicable for addressing this risk, you then have the opportunity to basically set your residual impact, so your risk after your control and mitigating actions. And that is basically it for the risk evaluation. Each of the entities have the ability to do so, and that will be consolidated into one overall risk library, where at group level, for example, you have the ability to see your complete risk exposure. And you have this visualization where you can see basically see your exposure from an inherent level to a residual level. And you then have the ability to dive into each of the risks that you want to have a further look at. Common for all of the platform, you have the ability to search. So it may be, for example, you're only interested in looking at Impero Sweden risks, and then you can basically dive into that. That's what I want to say about the risk management module for now. Going further to the control management module, I took you back to the dashboard, to the front page. Essentially, it's showing the same as the control management module. What you'll see here is a number of control programs, and that is basically to be seen as containers for each and all of your controls. This is where we're handling access management, so that's something that you should be mindful of. Taking a financial reporting control as an example as well. Basically, what you see within this control program is that this is where we store all of our financial reporting controls. Common for all of these controls is that we have built them using our template that contains 4 building blocks. And the first part of the building block is the details of the controls. So a name of the control and a control description. So that could, for example, be a control objective and background information. We then have our tag mechanism, which is to be seen both as control attributes. So it may be that the auditor, for example, or management would like a report of all of your key controls. You then have the ability to basically pull a report because you have used that specific tag dimension. So this is why we're saying it is equally serving as control attributes and equally serving as reporting dimensions. And I'll come back to that in the reporting module. We then have our scheduling engine here, where we basically have the opportunity to schedule at any given frequency for each and every control. We also have the opportunity to basically set up our annual wheel of controls once and for all, at least once a year, by defining our due date for each of the controls. And we even have the ability to have differentiated due dates per month. This is a monthly control. So it may be that for August and December, you want to have a customized due date due to holidays, for example. We then set a notification date, which is basically when Impero should first interact with the end user. So the end user only knows about Impero through email exchange. And they then receive an email, click on a link, perform a few clicks, have then performed a control. We then assign our users to each of the controls, and we have the ability to, first of all, assign a responsible which equals the control performer. And we then have the option to add 2 layers of reviewers. Going back to our tag mechanism, this is where we have the ability to standardize our controls and then push them out to, for example, a number of local entities for them to perform the exact same control. So in this example here, I am responsible for performing the bank reconciliation for company 300 in Denmark, and Morten is responsible for performing the bank reconciliation for company 200 in Denmark. So what this simply means is that every month, 2 controls are being pushed out, one for myself, one for Morten, and 2 responses are being sent back to Impero. We also have the ability to work with user groups. So it may be that you have a shared service center. It may be that you have a accounting department where it doesn't matter which colleague is going to perform the control as long as it's being performed by one of them. So in this way, we can basically just add a group of people, and we can make one person the default claimant. So per default, we have an expectation that Thomas, in this instance, is performing the control. However, the rest of the group members have the ability to claim the control and perform the control as well. The last part of the control template, the 4th building block, is basically what we call the heart of the control. And you should almost see it as a questionnaire where you build up your control activity using these measures on the right. So as an example, we've built a questionnaire around the bank reconciliation here, with the first step being using a radio button where the control performer has to confirm whether the control has been performed. We have the ability to provide detailed instructions, and we even have the ability to provide hyperlinks to, for example, standard operating procedures, process manuals, and other documentation. We also have the ability to communicate with our end users, so our control performer, so we can sit and basically say to them, we want to make sure that we have a standardized quality reconciliation. Please use this template that we have uploaded here. We then work with what we call required questions and conditions. So required are obviously questions that needs to be answered before a control can be submitted. And conditions are simply the fact that we can make an intelligent questionnaire where end users or control performers are only being presented for the questions that they need to answer and nothing else. So as an example, if the control performer has confirmed that the bank reconciliation has been performed, then they should upload supporting documentation. If they say, no, I can't confirm that I've performed the bank reconciliation, well, then they are not being presented with this option because it's simply not relevant for them. So that's basically from an administrator perspective, this is how you build up each and all of your controls using this template. I'm now gonna show you the preview of this control, and that is basically also the view that the control performer is gonna see when they click on the link from the email that they received from Impero. So as a control performer, what I have the ability to see here is the objective, the background information that I basically designed in my template. I have the ability to see the period of which I'm performing the control, and obviously that I myself is going to perform the control and who is to review it. This is in preview, so you can't see currently who's going to review it. Then I can see the different tag mechanisms here as well, and I can then start performing my control. So I have the ability to read my instruction, click on the hyperlink, or even download the template. And if I say confirm, I'm then being presented with the fact that I should upload supporting documentation and I can provide additional comments. And if I say I cannot confirm, then I should explain why. As an example, we've included a self-evaluation of the control effectiveness. So as and when I have performed my control, I'm going to evaluate my own work and say, well, I think I did brilliantly. My control is effective. The reason for that is I'll show you later in the reporting module, but we have the ability to create reports on specific answers given within each of these controls. So that was basically the control management module. Taking you to the reporting module, which is basically nicely wrapping up the risk and the control module. We are working with two types of reports. We have our standard report and we have our task-based report. Our standard report gives us the ability to work with a status over a period of time, or we can see our future workload with our workload report. As I was mentioning within the control performance, we also have these task-based reports where we can basically pinpoint and measure specific answers given within each control. I'm now going to show you an example of what a status report could look like. And basically, what this shows you here is for a period of time, we can then see the status of the activities that were to be performed. So in this example here of this country report, I can see that for the period of October 2021, 21 activities are to be performed, were to be performed. Only 7 of them are completed and 14 are overdue. If you remember back to the tag mechanism I told you about in the control management module, you have the ability to basically change this view in any dimension you want using the tag library. So now we have showed an example of a country dimension. We also have the ability to basically pivot our data. So again, as long as we have used the right tagging, then we can drill down in our control responses. So as an example here, we can basically go from Denmark down to the company number, to the control program, to the exact control. As for the control performances, we have the ability to work with push reports. And push reports are basically reports that we have saved with the dimensions that we would like. And we can then basically send these out to our middle management, upper management, whoever we want to send them out to, for them to make sure that, for example, controls are performed in a timely manner. And when we do this, it simply means that every, say, first day of the month, in this instance, the receiver receives an email with a link that takes you to this report so that they can see the status. The last thing that we promised to talk about today is the user administration, user management. So one thing is that you can easily monitor and report on the status of the control performance. Another thing is the daily housekeeping. So we have colleagues, for example, who are out of office due to illness or due to vacation, and we need to change their responsibilities. There are 2 ways to do so. And the first way I'm going to show you is basically via this status report, where all of these numbers that are given within this table are interactive. So for example, if I, as a responsible for Denmark, France, Germany, and Sweden, wants to make sure that these controls will be performed, I can click on the overdue controls, and it takes me to an activity list where I can see who the guilty people are. So it may be, for example, that I can see Thomas is the responsible who hasn't performed his control, can search on him, and I can easily reassign him to a colleague because I know that he is on vacation, for example. Or it may be that I know that Thomas is just lazy, and I can then send him a kind reminder. We also have the ability to archive controls, and that is simply if we have any controls that for some reason will not be performed and they're just messing up the big picture, we can then archive them. It equals the deletion of controls, but we want to make sure that we keep the audit trail. So hence why the archiving. So that was one way that we can basically easily handle user management and basically changing assignments. Another way is through our user management module, where you can first of all attach a role to each of the users. So as an administrator, you can do everything. As user administrator, user creator, tag administrator, log administrator, you can basically, you have elevated access rights as well. And likewise with the control manager, report manager, and risk manager, you can easily read on each of the roles what this specific role is able to do. For each of the users, you also have a nice overview to see what are their responsibilities. So for example, I am out of office due to holidays. I can easily click in and see I currently have 27 open controls that needs to be performed whilst I'm away. And I can, with one simple click, replace the user and assign them to someone else. Or it may be that I have found new opportunities outside of the company, and we can see that I have 8 controls that I am responsible for in the future, and we can easily replace me with someone else. So this way, it's very easy to do all of the, say, daily administration, housekeeping, if and when we have people that are on leave or on holiday. Last but not least, within Impero, all of the activities are being logged in our event log, and we even have the opportunity to also log our activity at a control level. So if you're interacting reviewer and performer together with notes, you have the ability to see that on controls. That was basically the demo for today. We hope that you've found it insightful. We hope that it was helpful. And if you have any questions, you are more than happy to reach out to either myself or to Morten, who will be back in a couple of weeks from now. And if you feel like this was a bit too high level, you also have the ability to go into our Impero website and find deep dive webinars of each of the modules. But yeah, thank you for today, and we look forward to welcoming you on our next webinar.